So question 4 is from Ray Holland. Ray.
Yes, thank you. My question is about the local marine environment. We've just heard from Maya that sea temperatures are rising and different species are migrating, and we have other invasive so-called species arriving in this new ecosystem or changed ecosystem. So my question is, should we be concerned about that, the impact on native species and other things, or should we just say, well, it's the changing environment and we have to put up with it?
Maya, it's on you, I think.
Great, thank you very much for that. Yes, we should be concerned probably. We have got a shifting environment. One of the reasons I love our British Isles is that we're very fortunate that we have the southwest warmer influence, so we have a sort of warmer species distribution around the southwest compared to the northeast where we have this polar influence. So we're caught in this lovely trap between north and southern species. So we have a lovely distribution of different species around our isles, and that is shifting massively, and that's really noticeable on the seashore. And a lot of work that Marklim does is looking at that shift and that northerly migration of species. So as time is going on, we are finding that some species that were only found in the West Country are slowly making their way further north, including invasive species like wireweed, Sargassum muticum. So wireweed from Japan, and it gradually made its way around the country. I actually found a case of it up in Col in the Hebrides as well. And as an invasive species, I think initially they were quite concerned about the impact it would have. When you look in a rock pool, it smothers a rock pool. When you snorkel over it, it's very tall, very erect, and actually a lot of the carpet algae underneath can get the sunlight they need to grow. But then when you consider it in terms of seagrass, if there's a scarring on the seabed, the wireweed will establish quicker than the seagrass. And that is a concern. Seagrass stores a hell of a lot more carbon than terrestrial forests, and it stores it for a lot longer as well. So that is an immediate concern. Some species will be more of a concern than others. Others will sort of just kind of integrate into the background of the flora and fauna that we have. Some may be useful. Some may create their own industries in aquaculture, as Pacific oysters have done in around our coast. So yes, it's a concern. It's not just about endangering indigenous species. It's also about affecting our tourism and economy as well. And it is something that needs to be globally dealt with. And there has been some considerable work, not wanting to leave on a positive, because it's a really big problem that we really must do something about. But the International Maritime Organization have been working on sort of strategies to combat in the invasive alien species. And in 2010, I'm just going to read this to you, the world's governments adopted the Convention on Biological Diversity Strategic Plan for Biodiversity. They don't give it nice little neat names, which said that by 2020, invasive alien species and pathways are identified and prioritized. Priority species are controlled or eradicated, and measures are in place to manage pathways to prevent their introduction and establishment. So things are being done on a sort of a global scale to help deal with some of these problems. Can we stop them? Probably not. You know, our seas are warming, things are changing. Copepod plankton is shifting in a way that means our basking sharks are shifting further north. So yes, be concerned. Yes, there is something being done on a global scale, and yes, we're going to see more species. When I did my seashore book, as soon as it was printed, there were things that should be in that book that have now been introduced. So it's a rapid issue. And there are new species every day that I hear about that are being spotted around the British Isles. Yeah.
Thank you. Shane.
And I mean, it's not just the changing climate that's exaggerating the issue, it's, you know, our own impact. We have connected two ocean basins, or two seas and two ocean basins together in the form of the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. You know, introducing, you know, cutting away a barrier that separated numerous species and introducing them into a foreign environment in which they probably have no predation. And while I admit that my expertise is far outside British waters, if you want to look at, you know, the potential dangers for invasive species in the ocean, just look at what's happening in the Caribbean with the lionfish. The species was most likely introduced through the aquarium trade, yet it got released into the environment and it's now decimating the fish populations down there because they have no natural predator, and the fish there haven't actually learned the behavior to avoid it and recognizing it as a predator. So this fish is consuming large amounts of juvenile fish, Also, I think also lobster species as well, that's also being decimated. And growing far outside their normal ranges. But just because there's that epidemic going on, that doesn't mean there's nothing that we can do about it. I'm not familiar with the programs in the Caribbean, but I know at least in Bermuda we have a lionfish task force. We are setting up an industry in which restaurants are trying to create demand for lionfish. We're holding regular lionfish tournaments. We can actually, at least in terms of lionfish, eat them to beat them. And we're actually creating almost a community kind of movement to go out and get lionfish. And the government can help with this too. They can legislate, the free removal of the species. Like with regards to permits in Bermuda, you can actually bypass environmental laws if your purpose is to hunt lionfish. You can go into restricted marine areas. You can go spear with scuba tanks, as long as you're doing it for the benefit of the environment. So if we're looking at invasive species up here that, as a community, we can manage, the government can actually help legislate the laws that we need to actually encourage that. So we are facing a potentially drastic environmental epidemic in terms of invasives, but we can certainly do a lot of things about it.
Thanks, Shane. Jackie, did you want to respond to this one?
I think there's some very close links here with other global issues, things such as ocean acidification, climate change, rising sea levels, what creates the warmer seas in the first place. I'm not an ecology specialist, and certainly not a marine ecology specialist, but there are certainly questions that we've received about why certain species are suddenly seen in the Sound or along the Cornish and Devon and Dorset coasts when they've not been there before. And I also know from working with friends and colleagues in Greece and in Crete and the Mediterranean that my friends who are fishermen out there are now seeing different species that they've not really had access to before. And it's starting to worry them about the sort of economic elements to it, whereas they were able to go out and get good quality hauls of good sized sardines. They're beginning to see changes in what they can get and the prices that are linked in. So I think in terms of sustainability, this is a much broader issue, and I have little idea of what we might do about it. But certainly in terms of the link with ocean acidification, and there's some extremely good work going on here in Plymouth at PML about that. It's something that desperately needs looking into, and solutions need to be found. Whether or not we can actually stop ecological dominance of species, I think you might have to go back to Darwin and some of the arguments in that to agree whether we could stop it in any way. That's the bit I don't know anything about.
Okay, thank you. Victoria, did you want to comment on this? Okay, so Ray, from what you've heard, are you...
Thank you, that's a very clear answer. It's a subject I really know very little about, but there's been a lot of debate and seemed quite uninformed debate locally about the dangers of eelgrass disappearing or invasions of Pacific oysters or more tuna arriving, which sounds like a good thing. But obviously it's a very complex subject. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.